Hello, lovelies. This is 5 Minute Manifesting, and I'm your host, Lovey Brown. Thank you so much for listening. I'm thrilled that you're here. And today I want to ask you a question. Are your thoughts true? Are your thoughts true? And I want to ask this question from the angle of very often it's our own thoughts that are holding us back from manifesting exactly what we want. And when that's the case, when our own thoughts are holding us back, it's because we're telling ourselves a story or we're having inner conversations that are counter to the thing that we want to manifest. Now, often when I'm having this line of conversation with someone, they will say, well, Lovey, I know that my thoughts are true because, for example, my specific person hasn't texted me in 3 days, so clearly they're not interested. Well, and even in that circumstance, someone not texting you for 3 days doesn't necessarily mean they're totally not interested, right? It just means they haven't texted you in 3 days. And there are things that you can do within your imagination to counter that. You can revise it if you choose to, but even not, you don't have to make someone not texting you for 3 days mean that they're not interested. Now, what it could mean is that that's reflecting back to you that you don't feel like a priority. So you have to really observe your thoughts, go into your thoughts and say like, oh, wait a minute, what am I thinking about this? What story am I telling about these circumstances that are creating these feelings and these other thoughts that aren't necessarily true? Now, even in circumstances when you hear some news or some information that is absolutely counter to your manifestation. Let's do an example where the specific person says, you know what, I'm not interested in dating you right now. I'm not interested in having a relationship with you. I would like to stop talking and for us to break up or for us to not have a relationship, whatever it is. Even in that circumstance, you can revise it, like I said, but you can also choose to say like, okay, tell yourself a different story. You don't have to tell yourself, like in that moment of rejection, that's very painful. It's very triggering. And we want to tell ourselves all sorts of thoughts. We have all sorts of thoughts about that aren't necessarily true. Like, I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. They don't love me. And even if they're reflecting back to you that they don't love you, it doesn't mean that you're not lovable, that you don't have lovable things about you, right? It just means that in this moment, this person is reflecting back to you a story probably based on your thoughts and fears that you've been telling yourself, and you need to really go into your imagination, go into your internal world, and tell yourself a different story. So you think that person, so if you're in that moment, right, that heat of that moment, and you're having these thoughts, the best thing to do, I think, is to really just say, thank you for letting me know, and then go away to be with yourself, and then have a conversation with yourself where you're soothing yourself, you're soothing the pain of that moment. You don't have to be dishonest about the feelings of what's happening. No matter what the circumstance is, no matter what has happened, you can take a moment to soothe the pain and the feeling of those feelings, and then you make a choice about what you want to do next. And going into your imagination and first repairing, not that you're doing a lot of repairing work. I don't want to say you have to do a ton of work. That's not it at all. But you do want to soothe yourself. And then you get to choose the thoughts you want to think. You get to choose the thoughts you want to think about that. You have a choice. And even the thoughts that you choose, they don't have to be rooted they can be rooted in whatever you want them to be rooted in, right? I mean, now, you honor what that person has said. You don't text them a million times, right? But what you do is you say, okay, thank you. And if you want to say, get back together with that person or repair that person, you first look at yourself and say okay, well, what is it in myself and who I'm being that would get this reflection back to me? And it's not, and I promise you, it's not that you're not worthy. It's not that you're not good enough. And so if those are the thoughts that you're thinking, you need to change those thoughts and focus on you being worthy because you are, because you're on the planet, and you being good enough because you are, because you're here on the planet. That's all the proof that I need. And you soothe yourself with those thoughts. And then when you turn back to thinking about them, you can choose whatever thoughts you want to think that get you to the end result that you want. We would be really great together. They're so lovely and awesome. I love the way they see how worthy and wonderful I am, and we would have such a great relationship. But the thoughts you're thinking that make you feel bad aren't necessarily true. And the thoughts that you're thinking that make you feel good aren't necessarily true either. But the point is that you get to choose. You get to choose what is true. Now, that doesn't mean, I do want to just say here, I'm not saying if you have a 3D circumstance, you don't have to lie about it necessarily. You don't have to just totally say that that's false and deny the reality of it. Let's say you want a red dress and you have a blue dress. You don't have to deny the existence of the blue dress because you want a red dress. Right? You just focus on having a red dress. So you don't have to deny the existence of the breakup to say that, like, we're going to be in your internal world, we're going to get back together, or whatever story you're creating about how they love you and how you're worthy of love. Those thoughts are your choice. You get to choose those thoughts. Thank you so much for listening, and may you manifest exactly what you want.